Okay.
Let me do a quick introduction, if I could, real quick. Thank you for bearing with us. It's been a little bit of a shuffle here, getting things to work. I would like to introduce our next speakers. We're going to talk about the Wake County Open Data Initiative. First is Carter Vickery, who's a senior GIS analyst with Wake County GIS. She's been a member of the Wake County Open Data Group and has worked with the team to craft the initial open data policy elements in the beta site, and really enjoys working with the open data community. So as a like-minded person from the western part of the state, we appreciate that and look forward to working with you. And I'd also like to introduce Bill Scannon. He's the Open Data and Innovation Coordinator for Wake County GIS, part of a collaborative effort to develop an Open Data and Innovation Program in Wake County, and has led the creation of the Open Data Group and worked with the team to craft the vision, the policy elements, and the approach for the program at Wake County. So probably a great resource if you are out there looking to start an open data program yourself. I know I'm going to be contacting Bill and Carter to get some information. So please give a warm welcome. And
all right, we're excited to talk to you about open data at Wake County today. And as Scott mentioned, I'm from the GIS, and Bill's actually the Open Data and Innovation in IS. We work closely together to bridge those two groups. So we'll start with the history of open data at Wake. So the GIS Open Data Online Party got started around 2000, and many of you in this room were there at the party. It was about the time we started putting zip shapefiles and image tiles online. And these have been free of charge for anyone to use, download, use, reuse. So Charles Friddle, who's here in the audience, who is our GIS director, and Ann Payne, who's the application team leader and geospatial DBA, made the decision to put that data out there for the public and for the business community, and of course for GIS specialists and municipal partners. So I like to say they were doing open data before open data was cool. So concurrently, 2000 was about when we started offering IMAP. So these two products complement each other. This continues to be a popular, user-friendly, interactive mapping site for GIS data across the county. And the use of IMAPs as the central platform for public access to GIS data and information is important because it spurred us into service-oriented architecture. So this is where we create, maintain, and manage the catalog of map services and image services. And it's an important part of what we do in GIS. So these are critical components that we provide for our apps. And at this point in time, we know that there's some other approaches available down the line. But for now, the enterprise map services provide a nice consistency. There's a nice catalog that's been QA/QC'd and it's been built up over time. And it allows for folks to see the same thing when they go to IMAPs, or when they go to the data download site, or when they use a specialized focused app. So we're not having inconsistencies in the numbers across those applications because it's pointed to one enterprise database. So in addition to the open data online, some other folks at the party were the kinds of activities that characterize a successful open data effort. And one of those things is regional collaboration. So Wake County has a long-standing, innovative, and I would say trend-setting partnership with the city of Raleigh in terms of how we do GIS. Raleigh's here, and we really appreciate this partnership and what it provides for the citizens and the businesses and the government agencies that come to IMAPs to see countywide data sets. So for a long time, we've worked to minimize the jurisdictional frustration for the customer and instead present a seamless, user-friendly experience with GIS across the county. And not just across the county. So Wake was also an early partner in NC1 Map, which was in the forefront of online mapping mashups and service-oriented architecture and open standards. So that kind of collaboration continues to be important. And I can't not mention metadata and standards. So Linda's here in the front, and Wake has a pretty good track record, I think, of encouraging the use of metadata and the development of data standards. And we participated in the Working Group for Seamless Parcels, the Working Group for Roads and Transportation, and the Ad Hoc Metadata Committee to keep these things alive. So if we're going to continue the analogy here, GIS kicked off the dinner party of delivering open data to the public with metadata and a rich history of regional collaboration and an approach of transparency. Then the open data movement is like the next course. So this room have attended an Open Data event? So that's a good showing. The first city camp in the Triangle was in 2011, and City Camps and Unconference is one of the ones up there. And so some of us sat in on those, kind of start seeing what was going on, and on some of the subsequent Open Data events that emerged in the Triangle. So as we began working at Wake, after a period of time really knowing that we needed to grow our Open Data offerings, the first thing that we did was go on what I like to call a listening tour. So those of you who program or even dabble in programming are familiar with event listeners, right? So the app's waiting for the user to do something, to turn the orientation of the phone, and then it's going to create, change the map. So Bill, our Open Data coordinator, and Justin Kreft, and Chris Matthews, and Chris Smith, and I, who are really kind of the core Open Data team for now, started going to Open Data events together, and we started listening. So what kinds of data sets are folks looking for? What formats do they need and want? And are they looking for data or other resources that are already available, but they're just having trouble finding them? And some of the things that happened as we were on our listening tour was we met some very cool people, right? So the Open Data community is a vibrant community of folks who care about the community, and they want to see what they can do to improve and protect their neighborhoods, and they care and they want to be involved in the schools that their kids attend. So another thing that characterizes this community is the work on regional projects. So very similar to GIS, folks are doing projects across a lot of jurisdictional boundaries, and they really need the data to follow regional standards and to be available and searchable regionally as opposed to jurisdictionally. And another thing that we found at some of these events is that there's a lot of room to collaborate and learn about GIS. So we're seeing really talented programmers at the events and designers. And we heard a lot today about how we in GIS need to be more conscious of our design and our UX. But what we're not seeing at some of the events is as many GIS programmers or analysts with a deep experience with geospatial data. So I'm kind of throwing out an encouragement to all of you to go to some of these events, get involved in Code for America or City Camp or Datapalooza, and start to collaborate and to share what we have and to build on some of the experiences of the talents of the folks out in this community. I think there's a really big opportunity there. So as we move from listening to growing our program, this is where increased collaboration is happening at Wake internally as well. And Bill's going to jump in here with me.
If I can work it out. Yeah, and actually it's interesting, again, open data has been around as a concept for quite a while, and even at the county where it's not GIS data that we've been sharing, there's a lot of different resources out that's been available openly for download. And so we were trying to figure out while we were listening was what's the difference between something like this and something like the concept of open data. And if we look, there's some of the different sets we have out there. We have the GIS data download page, which provides map services and a lot of data available for download. And then we also have real estate property data files out there, so anybody who wanted to get access to those files could download them as well. And we have an FTP server that's full of data that actually I'm mining today, trying to find data that we can make a little more accessible. And what we found in looking at all this information is a lot of it's hard to find, and a lot of it was put out there for one reason. Particularly the FTP site is probably the best example of that. So it was put out there in a lot of cases, a specific folder was put in a specific place for a specific request. And so if you didn't know that request was ever made or never thought to make it, you wouldn't know it was there. A perfect example of that is I was working on looking at if we could free up some of our permitting data, and we've had it out there for close to a decade in an FTP site that anybody who had been using it has known it was there, but I didn't know it was out there. So a lot of that is just finding it. And of course, the GIS data is much more readily accessible and obvious and easy to find, but it's out there specifically as GIS data. And one of the things as we've been listening is finding that a lot of times at the open data events, that people aren't thinking in terms of GIS data. So they're not looking on our websites for available GIS data, because that's just not the thought that they're coming at our presence with. So we've been working with that, I guess, trying to solve that problem is what open data is about, is making it available, useful, and easy to find. And I think that's where the new beta portal that we've launched recently is geared towards. And this is where the collaboration comes in. And I can echo, it helps that there's mutual respect. We've worked together for years, and I know Ann and Charles very well, as well as most of the GIS department. So I come with a lot of respect for GIS as both the department of Wake County, but also as a concept. But it is also, I think, part of growing this, building it on foundations that we already have, is one of the reasons why we decided to do this using the Esri data portal, is that we've already got these great tools in place. And Carter will touch on some of that a little bit more.
Absolutely. So we decided to stand up the ArcGIS Online beta portal. It fits well in our ecosystem, right? So we were able to take our ArcGIS services and put them into open data groups and provide something new, right? So rather than redesigning our existing system, we're able to build on it and move forward. So the biggest advantages, I think, of the site currently are that it's really easy to search, right? The search just works. So previously you had to scroll down a long list of GIS zip shapefiles and kind of figure out what you needed. And that worked really well for folks who were doing repeated use of the same data sets, right? They figured out where things were and they got it. But this opens it up to a new audience who may just come, once at one of these events, and they're looking for something, and if they don't find it very quickly, they're going to move on to a different idea. There's a lot of brainstorming and a lot of fluidity. So here they can search, and then the filter, I've been very impressed with in this solution. So you can filter a data set, and I'm not going to live drive because I think it's been a little distracting trying to hop between the two systems. But if you want to open up, the site is out there in beta form, and you can search for something like we have a county-wide park layer, right? It crosses all the jurisdictions as any park in Wake County. And you can filter on whether or not it has fishing or a dog walk park. So you can immediately preview what you're going to get, and there's some interaction there with the data before you even decide whether or not you want to use it. So this is, an instant value add for our customers who've been having to unzip data sets and put them into a GIS program before they even knew if they were getting what they wanted. So the other value add here is that now we're able to offer new formats, right? So JSON, GeoJSON is the big thing now, and we previously didn't have a mechanism to provide that. So now we have API access to GeoJSON, and we have API access to map services. If you want to just drop a map service into your app, those are available. And with data sets like the parcels that are changing overnight on a nightly basis, it's nice to have that live access to the data set so that you don't have to manage the data on your own server. And so when we stood this up also, we realized we were using a hybrid solution at Wake, right? So we have our own ArcGIS servers internally, so we're not consuming any credits, or there wasn't a cost to standing this up. And so Bill has this nice term. We call the program, the app, a beta, but we call the whole initiative a learning launch, right? So there was a no cost to entry to get started and to put this out there and to begin to develop a feedback loop with our users, right? So we have a survey that's out on the site, but we're also going to be doing focus groups at these events, right? So we go and we sit with, the groups are very different in the way that they use data, maybe a community group or a group of developers from NC State. They have very different entryways into the data, and looking at how they're using the site and what we need to do to enhance that for them. And of course, there's still technical work that's coming down the road, so we're going to be able to do image services soon, I think, in this app, which will be really nice to be able to search for those. It's a nice showcase for GIS. And then also historic data. So we've had, I think it's quite unusual, we put out, and Ann Payne was instrumental in this, is that we put out historic parcels. I think they go back to 1999. So if you want to do some land use research, you can get those. And currently those are still in the zip files, but we'll be moving them into a format so that we can serve them through this interface so that you can see that time factor in the data. So
although I'm a little concerned that 1999 is considered historic. I feel really old while I'm saying.
So our approach, I will say, so far has been to offer a high-value, highly curated set of data. So our approach at Wake is that we really want to put the data sets out there that we feel very confident in, the quality of them, they have metadata, and that we have a demonstrated use for them out in the community. So we don't want to clutter the site with too much, because I think that detracts from the user experience sometimes. Folks are having to wade through data and they don't know what they're looking at. So we're going to be very intentional in putting data out, and we're going to be responsive to the feedback loop as well in how we prioritize the next projects that we do.
Well, and just to hit part of the learning launch that I also want to be clear on is us learning as well. Like, in other words, it's not just about our community or citizens or the folks that we're working with in the open data community learning, but us learning as well. So we want to have strong processes for when people request data. How do we vet them? How do we measure, priority? How do we determine what's high value? So that's a big part of the learning launch, and a big part of what we're hoping to gain over the next few months as we start actually doing this and learning by doing instead of guessing at what we think will work based on what other people have done before us, which there's a lot of great experience, and we've leveraged getting even to this point.
So, and we're looking forward to featuring community success stories. So this project is all about what the community does with the data, and we're really looking for some stories to feature on the site to kind of help folks work with each other on the data and show each other what can be done. There's apps that we see the community building. There's analytics, there's visualizations, there's probably a lot of things we haven't even thought of that folks will decide to go and do with the data. And we want to create a banner, a feature across the site so that folks can learn from each other on that.
And so if you do anything with our site, let us know. There's actually a way you can do that through the site itself. But we want to highlight the use and usefulness of open data as much as anything else. Because it's one thing to know that there's potential, but there's another thing completely to know that there's actual value being created. And that's one of the things we're hoping to be able to go forward over the next few months, is gather this information, and when we bring it forward to our organization as a stronger program, we have a lot of good examples and stories about how it works. Plus, I will say, there are a few members of councils and boards of commissioners that understand open data and the concepts behind it, but the stories are what really captures the attention of pretty much everybody at a political level. When we're talking about investing in a program, it's important that we kind of understand where this fits in the range of priorities, and we can explain it in terms of that value. So that's one of the things that we're really looking for.
In terms of this session, right, data by and for the citizens, we think we're on the right track here with data for the people. We've got the site out, and we'll be working to add additional data sets in and get feedback on that. In terms of data by the citizens, I'm really glad we came after Sylvia's presentation, because we're starting to kick up ideas for collector apps and crowdsourced data sets, and the Trailheads was one of the first ones that we thought of, so we may be able to just piggyback off of what she's collecting there. But there are other ones that we're looking at as well. So we'll be working, doing some pilots of getting the folks in the community involved in collecting data as well, because that's not something that we're doing just yet. And it really is amazing to see the trajectory of how quickly you can get data sets collected, but also just the buy-in, the participation, I think is so valuable when people are a part of it in terms of doing their own editing. So again, just wondering where it's going to take you. We're really looking forward to seeing apps and wanting to stress. You've seen a lot of sessions with Leaflet and with open source at the conference, and that you can use this data in any package. Put a couple of the popular ones here, but in anything really, you can pull this data down and use it in the flavor of API that you like to work with. And then, of course, we're also letting folks know this runs parallel to IMAPS, right? So if, I've watched folks at events take a lot of time getting the data into an app just because they want to look at the attributes or they want to see it on the map. And IMAPS has, about 70 layers, give or take, that you can preview, and you can make a nice, simple, user-friendly map. And that's already built. So, they work in concert with each other. You can still go there and identify on features. So we just want to let folks know that program is still out there and going strong and has mobile versions, and we have a rewrite into the JavaScript API for that as well. And then we also are providing data in context. So Jason Horton and his team in Community Services Management and Budget have put together a site called Wake County by the Numbers. And you can go there and see some sort of highlight demographic information and economic trends. So if you want the data just packaged up to that level, you can go there. But then he also is offering the raw data that he used for that analysis. And we're going to be putting that into the Open Data portal. So if you want to take it and play with it and run with it on your own, that's available. But I think there's still the product that's done for you if you need to just grab a stat quickly for a report or something.
And so as we go forward, we're going to take this learning launch over the next few months. We're targeting July 1 is wrapping it up and making decisions about the future of the program going from there. We know for sure that this will be a tool that will be used for GIS data going forward. It's a natural fit for that, and it's an excellent tool for that. But we want to see what other data sets we can get out there and how people use them, how they leverage them. And so you're our audience for this learning launch. Everybody in this room are the people we're targeting to get the word out, to see how you use that. So give us your feedback. Let us know any challenges you have, any hard things you find about what we have out there, and anything you'd like to see that we don't currently have. And we'll get working on trying to free up everything that we can.
So we'll wrap up the analogy of the event listeners. So we plan to go from event listeners to event triggers. So we're very excited to see all of the apps that get launched off of this data and the analyses and the community success stories. So we look forward to hearing what y'all are able to do. And if you'd like to go check out the site, the link is there. And then there's also a link to the local wiki where we put this as well. So if you all aren't sharing your data repositories there or some of your links there, I encourage you to do that for the Triangle. It's a nice collection, and it's a place where folks, when they're at these events, they go there looking for data. So make sure that you're listed.
I guess we jump into questions now. If there's any questions for Carter, because I don't like it on the spot.
Absolutely, that's a great question. So just to repeat it, she's wondering advice for going to these events as a GIS person if you don't have a real strong programming background. And I was curious when I went to the first one how it would go. And I think it's a very open community, and folks, it's really about sharing skill sets and knowledge. So, my best example is you'll go there and someone will teach you, how to do something in Node.js, which you've never heard of, or maybe you had heard of it, but you hadn't actually installed it. And then you're going to teach them something about polygons versus point data, right? So it's this really nice transfer of knowledge, and it really is a very open environment. And there's folks there like Reed here, and it's just been very welcoming into the community. So I would say just go, and you'll find your skills in need, and you'll learn something new too.
And I'll echo that. I'm not actually a very technical person, so I go, if you're analytical, right, there's a place for you. If you're, even in some cases, project management backgrounds are helpful in terms of helping the group facilitate through the design that they're trying to create. So, there's roles for just about anybody in the technical arena, and they're great people. Actually, I'd say just working, there's the GIS community and the open data community share that they're open, willing to learn and teach and mentor and also grow from each other rather than kind of being teacher-student all the time. Sometimes people switch roles. It's a pretty great thing.
Thank you very much.